A lot of focus on the Iran massacre. The number keep rising of the mowed down innocent Iranians. We are now at 16,000, according to the Sunday Times in London yesterday, and we don't really know. And then tens of thousands of people arrested. They're probably being tortured, some of them murdered. I still expect President Trump to punish Iran. I don't know that you can do regime change with what weapons we have available to us, but we can certainly punish them. Hour number 3 today, I will talk with Michael Duran of the Hudson Institute. I'll talk with Senator Tom Cotton next hour, next episode, next segment. I'm going to talk with Bethany Mandel for perspectives on this question. But first, I got to tell you about a story that gobsmacked me this morning. And I went on Fox News. I thought I was going to talk to Sandra Smith or John Roberts, and then I thought I was going to be Aisha, and it turned out to be Jillian Turner, and I identified her as Aisha. But I was in a studio where I could only see the camera. I couldn't see a return, and I'm not so good with voices right out of the box, but it's Jillian, so forgive my misidentification at the beginning of this. But the story today was about what Vice President Harris had her team ask Pennsylvania Governor Shapiro. That is astonishing. Cut number 2.
Bring in Hugh Hewitt, Fox News contributor, also host of the Hugh Hewitt Show. The only thing more shocking to the conscience than this anti-Semitic trope that the Harris campaign parroted when they asked the governor this question is, how on earth did this stay hidden all this time? How did this not come out before now?
I think I should. The only people who have talked about the vetting process other than Team Harris has been Governor Shapiro, and indirectly his new book, Where We Keep the Light. I don't have a copy of it yet. I hope I get a copy. I hope he comes on, does an interview with me, because he's a very smart, sort of an old school, normal Democrat, man of the liberal left, but not left-wing lunacy. That question, and there was a second follow-up question. First question from Dana Remus, former White House counsel to the campaign of Vice President Harris, formerly counsel to the Obama, not a bad lawyer. She followed up, are you an agent of the Mossad, with, have you ever been in touch with an Israeli counterintelligence operative? These are so anti-Semitic. My eyes rolled back when I read them, because those are classic tropes of the ancient evil. You know, dual loyalty, protocols of the Elder of Zion, Jews run the newspapers, Jews run Hollywood. It's so anti-Semitic, and it came in so late. The real question is, what did the Harris team think they were doing? We have had a Jew from the Democratic Party on a national ticket before, Joe Lieberman. I am very certain nobody asked Joe Lieberman from Team Gore, are you an agent of the Mossad, and have you ever dealt with an agent of the Mossad, and will you ever deal with an agent of the Mossad? It's astonishing to me, but the Democratic Party has a Jewish problem. They don't like them, and the left wing is ascendant in the Democratic Party, and it's a burden that the Democratic Party candidates in 2028 are going to share with Governor Shapiro. Now, he's got a re-election campaign in November against the state treasurer, Garrett, and she's pretty good. So it's not a layup for him in November. But he's a very competent politician. He would never lie about something like this. So I am astonished that Dana Remus even agreed to ask it. But I'm curious about who in the Harris campaign had sort of old school anti-Semitic tropes baked into their brain pattern, because it's wild.
The fact that she then said to him, well, you know, we got to ask, to me, makes this seem even more malicious, in the sense that the campaign very obviously did not have to ask this prominent Jewish politician whether he was a double agent for Israel, and they certainly did not ask other non-Jewish candidates that question, which really underscores they were suspicious about him, particularly because he was Jewish.
You know, Aisha, you're exactly right, because it is so from outer space. Again, I go back to the Lieberman precedent. I'm quite certain Lieberman was not asked if he was an agent of the Mossad. I think they were trying to drive Josh Shapiro off the ticket. I think they were trying to get him to withdraw, because he was quite obviously the best candidate for their ticket, and Kamala Harris was quite obviously not pro-Israel. And remember the Rafah? I've looked at the maps. You can't go into Rafah. So I just am astonished by this, but I guess nothing surprises me when it comes to the left wing of the Democratic Party anymore.
Hugh, we got to leave it there. Thank you for taking time with us today. Great to talk to you as always.
Thank you, Jillian.
Oh, they cut off my thanks, Jillian. I finally saw her, and thanks, Jillian. But I apologize for that. I just don't have good audio recognition of other people that I'm not on often. But now I'll know Jillian. I also have to do the second. That was crazy. All right, that's a crazy story. I've got my ask into the Team Shapiro. I would like to talk to him, read his book, talk to him like I have Secretary Clinton, Secretary Kerry. He's been on the program before. He's a normal, old-school Democrat. Wrong, not rotten. And there's a difference between wrong and rotten, right? Rotten is anti-Semitism. Wrong is, we want to spend more money than we have. And there's a big difference between the two. Second outrage of the weekend happened at a Baptist church in Minneapolis yesterday when it was invaded by Don Lemon and a group of Don Lemon acolytes dressed up as anti-ICE demonstrators, cut number 3.
Into Minneapolis a little bit ago and did some reconnaissance on the ground, speaking to an organization there that's gearing up for resistance and protest. I've been pleasantly surprised to see the community coming together. Diverse community. If you see this, when we first pulled up, we're like, wait a minute, which operation are we at? And as it turns out, because we're like, well, this is kind of MAGA coded, right? Saw the American flag or whatever, but these are resistance protesters. They're planning an operation that we're going to follow them on. I can't tell you exactly what they're doing, but it's called Operation Pull Up, and it's Sakima Armstrong, and she has been doing this since George Floyd, Dante Wright, and others, where they surprise people, catch them off guard, and hold them to account. And so that's what we're doing here. And then after we do this operation, you'll see it live. And these operations are surprise operations. Again, can't tell you where they're going.
All right. Don Lemon is never going to win the spelling bee. And I've told you that 100 times. I know Don Lemon. I've worked with Don Lemon. Don Lemon is a little bit limited by brain space. It's not there in abundance. It's a tight corner, right? Can't move around much. So, when was the last time you saw Don Lemon? I don't know. They threw him off CNN during the brief Chris Lick interregnum. Hadn't been hired by anybody else. So, like Jim Acosta's gone into the podcasting business. And good on him. They're probably Don Lemon fans. If there are people out there paying for Don Lemon, I got to tell you, really, I got Relief Factor here to tell you because it will actually help you. But Don Lemon then invaded a Minnesota church with these people, and they violated the FACE Act, which is a felony. All right? It is a felony of, put the Don Lemon video back up. So he's not with the group. So he's going to claim a kind of journalistic privilege that doesn't exist. The Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act has been around since 1994. So it's 32 years old, 32 years old. I can do math. I'm a lawyer. Freedom of Access to Clinics Act. But it also covers churches. It specifically covers churches. And it's designed to keep morons like this group and would-be pretend journalists like Don Lemon from impeding churches and clinics. And it's supposed to be, that's neutral. You can be a MAGA church. I don't think there are many. You can be a left-wing church. I think there are a lot of them. You can be a abortion clinic, or you can be a pro-life help women clinic. It doesn't matter. It's viewpoint neutral. All right, so that means it's constitutional. What Don Lemon does not appear to understand is that churches are not public forums. Now, there are 3 categories of public forums, and I have litigated them. I have taught them for years, and I'm here to tell you there are traditional public forums, limited public forums, and non-public forums. Yeah, a non-public forum would be, for example, a mail system internal to an elementary school. Mailboxes, you can't just put stuff into them. Limited public forum is a park. You apply and you get a permit for a demonstration, time, place, and manner restriction, perfectly legit. And a traditional public forum is a sidewalk. I mean, they could have stood outside the church. But there is no First Amendment right. I just want to let people know. Don't get your con law from Don Lemon. Or it's like letting me cook for you. Don't do it. Don't get it be like trusting the Browns to get to the Super Bowl next year. Do not do it, because Don Lemon does not have a clue. And in the colloquy, which I don't have, that I heard on the radio that he had with the pastor just said, "We're here to worship Jesus Christ." And Don Lemon said, this is the tradition of First Amendment. No, it's not. No, it's not. And by the way, in the Martin Luther King tradition, they sat in and they went to jail. That's why Martin Luther King wrote on Martin Luther King Day, letter from a Birmingham jail. Bethany Mandel is the wonderful brain behind the momwars.substack.com, along with a couple of her co-creators, the momwars.substack.com. You can follow Bethany on X at Bethany Shondark. But I feel a little bit like everyone I asked to go out in high school, Bethany, you've been busy the last few weeks. Washing your hair. I don't know what's going on. You've been vanished, ghosting me.
I literally did ghost you. I forgot that we changed our time after I got home from Israel, and I have 6 kids, and I just forget everything if it's not written down.
That's okay. At least I hadn't asked you for a date. That used to happen to me all the time. I heard excuses you've never heard of before. Bethany, I want to go very serious. The number out of Iran is over 16,000 murdered in the streets, according to the Sunday Times of London. So I'm using 15,000 as a baseline. On a proportional basis, that's worse than 9/11. That's worse than 10/7. I think it's worse than Tiananmen Square. It's horrific. What should the United States do?
I mean, that's the $1 million question. Like, what is our moral obligation to the people of Iran? I think that, I mean, we're already doing better than the Obama administration did when similar things happened. I really struggle with it because there is a reticence on everyone's part, including my own, that we don't want to get involved in the Middle East because it's a never ending, pile of badness. You can't ever really seem to get out. But I think that we need to be having some conversations with the opposition quietly and ask them very sincerely, what do you need? How can we help you? And if there's ways that the United States can provide support without, going in and pushing the domino, I think that we should consider it.
Now, Bethany, my preferred choice, I'm going to talk in hour 3 with Michael Duran of the Hudson Institute for most of the hour, because he's one of there are really only a handful of Iran experts out there. Michael Duran, Karim Sadjapur, Mark Dubovitz. There are a few who are not in the government. I'm going to ask him, why is Karg Island not smoldering? There are only 3 oil terminals on the coast of Iran. They ship all the oil that supports the regime to China and other ghost ship buyers because they're sanctioned. They'll run out of money if we blow up their oil. So I'll get an answer from Mike. But what do you think about that? Why don't we do that?
I mean, I wonder what the plan was. It seems like a week ago, America was about to do something militarily. And I wonder if that was it. And I wonder, especially with the Trump administration, you always have to sort of trust that things are going on behind the scenes. And I wonder what the plan is. I think that there is one. And, that seems to me an obvious point of attack, but maybe there's things going on behind the scenes that we just have no way of knowing. And so I'm kind of trusting a little bit that the right things are happening behind the scenes.
Now, I do believe that 2 conversations last week between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump occurred. I have no idea what they said. I do have a great deal of trust in Chairman Kaine, Secretary Rubio, Secretary Hegseth, Director Ratcliffe, Susie Wiles, the Big Five. I think he gets a lot of good options, and I do think we're going to do something that is visible. But I also see online, I don't think it's fair, people blaming him for encouraging people to protest. And I don't think you can blame a massacre on someone who is saying, go for it. The only thing they would have seen is he had one tweet before they were cut off from the internet. They couldn't have heard his interview with me. They couldn't have heard his interview with Sean Hannity. They couldn't have heard his interview with Tony DeCopel. They couldn't have seen his tweets over the weekend that were more aggressive. Do you think it's fair to blame him for any of the deaths because it is happening online?
No, absolutely not. I mean, this is sort of the bigotry of low expectations. You think that the Iranian people are only getting out into the streets because they think Donald Trump told them so. You can't get Republicans out in the street because Donald Trump tells us so. The Iranian people have been suffering under this regime for close to 5 decades, and they see an opportunity to topple it. And, these accusations are being made by progressives, and as progressives, I used to be one until the glaring, inconsistencies forced me away from that camp. You have to believe in human rights, and for them to be silent, and progressives are silent on what's happening in Iran right now.
As a
For them
tomb.
to be silent is such an abdication of everything they claim to believe.
All right. Now I want to move to the second question. The story came out in Josh Shapiro's new book, I think it's Where We Have the Light. I haven't got it yet. It doesn't come out till January 29. But it was released by his publisher that when he was being asked by Team Harris questions, they asked him, number one, are you an agent of the Mossad? And when he looked at Dana Remus, former White House counsel, and said, that's a deeply offensive question, she shrugged and said, well, we have to ask. And then she asked him, have you been dealing with Israeli intelligence? Which is like doubling down on the trope. What's your reaction to those two questions? Because he's not the first Jew that's been on a national ticket. That was Joe Lieberman. I'm pretty sure Al Gore's team did not ask Joe Lieberman those questions.
Yeah, no, I mean, this really signals the shift that the Democratic Party has seen in the time between Lieberman and now Shapiro. It's terrifying. The fact that they claim they had to ask it is absolutely absurd. And my friend Aaron Kayak, who used to work for the Biden administration, ripped this question when it was announced that it was asked, because it is to its core anti-Semitic, that American Jews cannot possibly be independent, patriotic Americans without some underlying quiet loyalty to Israel. These questions are never asked, of Catholics. What are your secret ties to Rome? Like, that is an absurd question, and it's equally absurd directed towards a Jew about Israel.
It is. It's also part of the ancient trope of dual loyalty and not being trustworthy. And it's kind of a blood libel, and it's kind of one of the things that no one in there with any experience would ever ask, if only because of the political damage it does to Kamala Harris.
Yep.
So who do you think came up with that question? Dana Remus, Eric Holder, someone with Jews on the brain came up with that question. And it wasn't, I can't believe it was Eric Holder.
I mean, it could have come from anyone on Kamala's team. That's the sad truth. So this excerpt was released to The Atlantic, and another tidbit from it was they went over his personal finances and found out he's not rich. I guess that stereotype doesn't play out. And they asked, well, do you really want to spend money on like new clothes and hair and makeup for your wife, really? And I'm like, oh, there you go. Like asking a Jew how cheap he is. That was another question that I also thought.
Really? I didn't see that.
On the anti-Semitism front. Yes.
Oh, yes. I got to read. They're selling books. The name of the book is Where We Keep the Light, Stories from a Life of Service. I know Governor Shapiro. I've had lunch with Governor Shapiro. He's been on this show. I'm not going to vote for him. He's wrong, but he's not rotten. Right. This is nuts. And how deep does the anti-Semitism run in what is the, quote, mainstream Democratic Party?
Pretty deep. Pretty deep. I mean, it was so funny because it was to their detriment. They announced walls in Pennsylvania. They understood the importance of Pennsylvania, and they still passed over Shapiro for a far less appealing vice presidential candidate because they were so afraid of putting a Jew in that spot that they shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, I actually believe they were trying to get him to withdraw because they knew he was the best candidate, so they were trying to insult him into withdrawing. And now you've given me more additional fuel for that theory if they asked him about spending money. Anna,
I'll tweet it.
Kamala Harris, go home. Never come out. Bethany Mandel, come back. Don't give us the cold shoulder again. Don't ghost us again. We love you. Bethany Mandel on X, themomwars.substack.com. I have no idea who sang this song, but it captured the hearts of America. What year is it, Adam? I'm going to guess 72. Gosh, this is Kurt Signetti if you're watching on the Salem News Channel. And I wore my IU tie on Special Report on Friday night. But I must say that Generalissimo may have taken that like he took my Indiana bandana. We are rooting for Indiana tonight. We being people of good faith and generous heart, because they haven't won anything in 50 years. So we are all IU tonight. We are Spartacus. But I want to say to Margaret Fett, I don't care how Dwayne pronounces your name. He likes to pronounce it Margaret in the Old English way, and I don't want to do that, Margaret Fett. And I want to tell people, although Dwayne took my tie, I still have Margaret's calling card. The university, not the, universityofsewing.com says, thank you for your order. Explore our offerings. Bernina sewing machines and long arms, quilting fabrics, apparel fabrics, needles, accessories, thread. And you can stay connected to the universityofsewing.com. They've got Facebook, they've got Instagram, they're on YouTube. And I'm not enrolled at the University of Sewing. I've never sewed anything, not even a button. But I did appreciate the tie. I hope you appreciated, IU fans out there, that I wore it on Special Report on Friday night. But I don't have it today because Dwayne took it. And that's what happened. It could have been Mrs. Dwayne. Mrs. Dwayne is very sticky-fingered when it comes to stuff lying around the studio. And coming up after the break, I was on with Trey Gowdy last night, sounding the alarm about the midterms. But I do want to play for you Harmeet Dillon, who is the Assistant Attorney General for the Division of Civil Rights at Justice, commenting on Don Lemon invading City's Church in St. Paul yesterday, cut number 4.
The Attorney General has been on this from the moment it happened. There are already 2 prosecutors from my office on their way to Minneapolis, and they'll be there this morning. We have an FBI team assembled and local prosecutors as well. This is going to get the highest attention from the Department of Justice because there is no more sacred right in our Constitution than the right to assemble and pray to God. And there are federal laws that protect that right. And what happened here was a shameful exercise of virtue signaling, disruption, fear, terror. You can see children in this video being ushered out the back by their terrorized mothers. And this is illegal. And I want to add that the Biden administration prosecuted people peacefully praying outside abortion clinics for much, much less.
I want to add that a number of churches have been subject to mass shootings and attacks. All right? So a number of churches, including some that I have been at as a guest, not preacher, but speaker, have security, a lot of security. And Minnesota is both an open carry and a concealed carry state, and it's a shall issue state. Those people are lucky they are not dead. Because if you bang into a church that way, what do you think the dad impulse is if you're in that church? What if you're carrying, I mean, I don't know if the church is open carry, closed carry. You can prohibit private property. You can say, don't bring guns in here. I don't know what the church's position is. But I don't know that it wouldn't have been justified in the world and the time in which we live if they had opened fire on the lemonades. Because that is crazy against the backdrop. Can you imagine barging into a school these days, uninvited, unannounced, a group of 20 people? I don't know how many people were with Don Lemon and a guy with a microphone. Can you imagine what the reaction of school safety officers, a.k.a. police with guns, school resource officers? Can you imagine that? This is incredibly reckless. And I hope and by the way, Don Lemon being a journalist, and journalism is a craft, it's not a profession. He was on TV for a while, he can still call himself a journalist. Anyone can be a journalist if you're, the guy who exposed the Somali community fraud, he's a journalist. Anyone's a journalist, it's a craft, not a profession. It does not bestow on you any special protection, none. You don't get extra rights because you're a bonehead journalist. So they all violated the FACE Act. And I would not be surprised to see them all charged by the end of the week. Because smart old Don Lemon put it on tape. Didn't check with a lawyer first. Because that was a bad move, John. I was on with Trey Gowdy on Sunday Nights with Trey Gowdy, Sunday Nights in America last night. And I was not bringing good news to Republicans. Cut number 1.
Joining us as host of the eponymous radio show, Fox News contributor, law professor, a modern-day Renaissance man, Hugh Hewitt. Welcome, Professor. Republicans are losing votes in the House and having defections in the Senate, and this is all with majorities. What is going on?
Well, what is going on is not the ideal way to take off. Good evening, Congressman. Good to see you. I went back and looked up, for the benefit of the audience, the midterm results in the second midterm election of two-term Republican presidents, Eisenhower, Nixon, Ford, W. And it doesn't look good for the second term of Trump. Back in 1958, Eisenhower saw the Republicans lose 49 seats. Nixon, Ford in 1974 off year, second term, of Nixon. It was filled in by Ford after the resignation. They lost 48 seats. W held those losses down to Reagan held those losses down to 5, and then W lost 30 in 2006. So I think the title charts in the House are against the Republicans. So if they're going to get something done, they should just take a look at those numbers and realize they better do it in a hurry if they want to impact the election. As for the Senate, that map you put up, I think Senator Collins is safe in Maine. They threw $20 million at her 6 years ago, and she won by 10 points. But Michael Whatley in North Carolina, that's an open seat. That's tough. We look over Ohio, that's going to be very tough as well. And so Sherrod Brown's getting back in into the race. And down in Texas, self-inflicted wound, John Cornyn has a layup, but for the fact there's a primary with Ken Paxton and Wesley Hunt running. And now Louisiana, there's a primary with Dr. Cassidy. So now Alaska, I'm not worried about. Dan Sullivan is a very solid, I think, re-elect. But Chuck Schumer's not talking through his hat. It's possible. So what could go from a triple play for Donald Trump could easily see the House and the Senate in Democratic hands, certainly the House.
Hold on to Texas for a second. I want to ask you about Georgia. Trump and Brian Kemp both won Georgia. Why is that not a prime pickup opportunity for Republicans?
It is, I think. John Ossoff is the Democrat who won in the strange circumstance of 2020. And I don't know that he's shaving yet, but there is a three-way primary in Georgia, two Republican congressmen and Mr. Dooley, son of the famous football coach. And whatever happens in that primary will either activate and elevate the Georgia general election or depress Republicans again. It's not the ideal situation. Governor Kemp would have won it walking away. I wish he had run, but he's not running, and we are where we are. John Ossoff, luckily, is to the left of left, and I think he's considerably left of the Georgia regular electorate. So I'm optimistic about a pickup there, and there's a chance, by the way, in Michigan. Mike Rogers looks really good, and Republicans shouldn't even write off Minnesota after the craziness of the past month. I think maybe people are starting to scratch their head and wondering if they don't need a Republican somewhere in the state.
All right, let me come home to the Lone Star State. There is a war, as you referenced, between John Cornyn and Ken Paxton, with Wesley Hunt running third. That race will cost a ton of money, which could be used in other states. Cornyn votes with President Trump 99 or 100% of the time, depending on which count you look at. I mean, that's an A+ even on a Hugh Hewitt exam. What's going on in Texas? What's Cornyn done wrong?
Well, Cornyn hasn't done anything wrong. Ken Paxton has. He's lost the confidence of a lot of Republicans, but there are a lot of people who like to vote for who they perceive as the most conservative person in a race. John Cornyn's very conservative. He's also the former justice of the Texas Supreme Court, and it's a layup. If he's the nominee, he's going to win. I don't even think the Democrats will put money into it because he's very, very popular. Attorney General Paxton, who I know and I like, but he shouldn't have gotten into this race because it's wasting valuable resources. The same for Congressman Wesley Hunt. I don't like wasting money, time, and effort on the Lone Star State when John Cornyn is a Trump-supporting conservatives who's very smart, been in leadership. Everybody pays attention to him on Judiciary Committee. So that is really an unforced error on the part of the Republicans. Hopefully, right now there's an Emerson poll that says it's tied between Paxton and Cornyn. I have to think common sense will prevail and Cornyn will get the nomination.
The unparalleled mind of Hugh Hewitt, loaned to us on a Sunday night, hopefully for free. Thank you for joining us, professors. As always, it is great to see you.
Thank you, Trey. Be well.
I don't know what unparalleled as an adjective means. Don Lemon's got an unparalleled mind too. So I got to ask the former chairman of the House Oversight Committee, and he did Elan Benghazi Select Committee. Got to ask him what he means by unparalleled, because Don Lemon's unparalleled in some ways too. So he's very nice to me. The only guy who calls me Professor Hewitt, though I've been teaching at Chapman Law School since 1996, the Fowler School of Law, and Con Law, and 1995, a year before it. And I never hold myself out as an expert on torts, but we don't teach Con Law in the first year, so I got the second year's beginning in 1996, and been teaching it since then. So Trey Gowdy is himself a superb lawyer. He's a prosecutor, though. I am not a prosecutor, never have been a prosecutor. I prosecuted warrants. So I do know a little bit about presenting something to a court, and I have been a defense counsel on at least two that I can recall matters. One was the son of a friend on my church session. I went into the courtroom and I asked the prosecutor to help me out that I was flailing, and they did, and got the young person the appropriate punishment, which was not jail time. And then I represented a real estate developer whose contractor ran over and squashed a desert tortoise. That's a felony. And so never seen. Actually, the U.S. attorney actually came in to the not an AUSA, the United States Attorney for Nevada, or at least Las Vegas. I don't think there are two districts in Nevada. It would be the Southern District if there are. And he actually came in the room to negotiate. And I thought, oh boy, my client's in big trouble, and I'm here without a real defense lawyer. But I'll say this about Trey Gowdy. When he says something about prosecuting, listen to him. Man's put a lot of people in jail. I want to remind you, I've got Senator Tom Cotton coming up next hour. I do want to also remind you, I'm in the Relief Factor studio. And here's my bag of Relief Factor. I'm going to take my Relief Factor today because I did 11 and a half miles on Saturday, which is not bad for an old guy. I wasn't fast. I was trundling, moving at a pretty good clip for the first half of that. Not so good for the second half of that, out and back course. And no better place to be than Huntington Beach or any of the beaches in Southern California. But I do need my Relief Factor. I got to keep taking. I'm fine, by the way. I did 4 miles. I went up the Implacable Hill this morning. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. You can see it if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, and you can hear it if you're listening on the Salem Radio Network or one of our wonderful affiliates. And I take it every day in the first hour of the program because I want everyone to know you can keep moving, you can work out, you can be a gym rat, you can be a swimmer, you can trundle, you can run, you can race. You can do whatever you want to do. You can be Dwayne's preferred exercise to go to Disneyland and walk 20 miles. Whatever it is you do, if you take a Relief Factor, you'll feel better afterwards. Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, and omega are the natural supplements that support your anti-inflammatory system. They don't make ridiculous promises. They don't promise to heal compound fractures. They're not going to get rid of a torn rotator cuff. But if you got minor aches and pains of the sort that you reach for over-the-counter medicines, don't do that. They're not good for you long term. You just can't be taking Aleve every day. Some of us can't take any Aleve or other NSAIDs. So try a natural supplement way. And the only natural supplement I've taken for more than 20 years is Relief Factor, and this is year 13. I know because the same year we started the Hillsdale Dialogues, which you can find over at hughforhillsdale.com. Relief Factor is when I started Relief Factor. And I continue to take it for 13 years and will take it as long as I'm on the air and then long thereafter because I'm hopefully going to live a long time and I want to keep moving. And that's what the essence of Relief Factor is. Keep moving. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, or go to relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent was on with Kristen Welker yesterday, cut number 7.
President Trump strongly believes that we cannot outsource our security because, Kristen, let me tell you what will happen, and it might not be next year might not be in 5 years, but down the road, this fight for the Arctic is real. We would keep our NATO our NATO guarantees, and if there were an attack on Greenland from Russia, from some other area, we would get dragged in. So better now, peace through strength, make it part of the United States, and there will not be a conflict, because the United States right now, we are the hottest country in the world. We are the strongest country in the world. The Europeans project weakness. The U.S. projects strength.
And Europe really cannot exist without it. I think this is silly. I think that they think they're dealing with Joe Biden or Barack Obama instead of Donald Trump. He's very serious about Greenland because he understands what hypersonic missiles do and what the Chinese fishing fleet does. And he's not going to let that happen in the exclusive economic zone around Greenland, which he cannot patrol with authority unless and until it's under the protection of the United States as either a protectorate or a territory. End of debate. Good Monday to you. Go Hoosiers. Big Ten fans always root for the Big Ten unless it's the team up north, in which case we take a pass. But today is an important day. I'm going to talk with Michael Doran about Iran in hour 3. I'm going to talk to Senator Tom Cotton coming up after the break about that. And the Iran massacre is at 16,000 and counting, according to the Sunday Times, which is a very reliable reporter of facts. If you haven't seen college campuses explode in protest, it's because they explode in protest only when they can protest against Israel, not when inhumanity and acts that shock the conscience occur. As a matter of proportion, Iran's got 90 million people. China has 1 billion people. Tiananmen Square, as a matter of proportion, did not come close to what Iran did last week, nor did 9/11 to a nation of 310 million, 20 million on 2001, nor did 10/7/23 in Israel, which was bigger than 9/11 on a proportionate basis. But mowing down 16,000 people in Iran last week is a massacre and a cruelty on a part. There is no actually comparison as far as I know. So I hope Donald Trump punishes them. I don't believe he can bring the regime down via strikes, but I think he can send a very deep and enduring message that you may not mow down your citizens in the street. And he can do that, I think, most easily by blowing up Karg Island and the other 2 oil terminals, because they don't benefit the people of Iran. They don't get real money into their pockets, and it would be impossible to miss. I'll talk with Michael Doran about that in hour 3. I do want to take a moment, though, to tell you about John Calhoun, because apparently Jacob Fry did not realize he's throwing in with John Calhoun. John Calhoun was pretty much every job in the pre-Civil War period was held by John Calhoun, who lived from 1782 to 1850. He was a senator from South Carolina. He was the Secretary of War, I think, for Polk. He was the Secretary of State, I believe, and he was Vice President. He's also something of a self-made political theorist. And he realized that Jeffersonian political theory and every other political theory could not justify the enslavement of human beings. And he was a slave owner from South Carolina. So he came up with his second treatise of government, his first, I think, there's a lot of Calhoun. I do not bother to read him. He was the animating spirit behind the defense of slavery that began after the Revolution and the Constitution. And he was effectively demolished by Abraham Lincoln. His theories were demolished by Abraham Lincoln in the Cooper's Union speech and other places. But the point is, he invented nullification theory in 1828 because he didn't like the tariff of 1828, national tariff before the income tax. He didn't like that because South Carolina had Charleston, Big Harbor. They didn't like the tariff. So Calhoun cooked up, well, we don't have to apply it if we don't want to. We can pick and choose. We can nullify federal law. And then in 1832, when South Carolina started to make noises about actually leaving the Union for the first time, they would leave the Union or try to leave the Union. They never left the Union. The rebellion began, the Civil War began, but they never left because of the unitary theory of the Constitution and the contract theory of the Constitution. And there is no nullification theory. It's cooked up. But the bottom line by nullification theory is we don't have to apply federal laws we don't like. That was repudiated by the Civil War, and it's been repudiated by the federal government since the Supreme Court case. Well, there are many of them, but Marbury versus Madison establishes the right for the Supreme Court to decide judicial overview. And then McCulloch v. Maryland establishes the supremacy clause and the necessary and proper clause. And there are other cases that apply to the supremacy clause. Bottom line, though, you don't get to ignore federal law if you're a local official. So let's go to Jacob Fry yesterday, or was it yesterday? I'm not sure. With Jake Tapper, cut number 6. The mayor of Minneapolis does it again.
The second these ICE agents leave the city, I'm telling you, you're going to have calm in Minneapolis, and you will continue to see the great comeback that we had been experiencing. Let us get back to that comeback. Let us live in peace. Let us have businesses that are open and daycares where you don't need to escort staff to and from. Let us live in a place where, look, in Minneapolis, we'll stand up. If we have to sled down ice hills to get to a protest, we'll do that. If we've got to make sure that people are escorted to the grocery store, we'll do that. But truthfully, we want to get back to a place where we can just love on our city, do our daily activities, just like any other town in America.
Sounds just like the Confederates. Really. We just want to enslave people. We just want to have no tariffs. We just want to ignore federal law. Jacob Fry is an insurrectionist, like the rebellion, like the cause. They called it the old cause. There are lots of words for the Civil War, but they try and cook up with a bunch of words. If we have to escort people to the grocery store, it doesn't matter if you're escorting people to the grocery store if ICE shows up. And by the way, it's not just ICE, it's Federal Task Force. They include the FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, include Customs Enforcement, DHS. They could get TSA to involve themselves. All that Minnesota has to do as a state, and all that Minneapolis has to do as a city to restore calm is comply with federal law, not be a sanctuary city, and when they encounter a person in the country illegally, an illegal alien, and they have arrested the illegal alien, they need to inform and issue a detainer, term of art. That means they call up ICE and they say, we've got Joe Bag of Donuts. He's in custody. Do you want him? And if that Joe Bag of Donuts is wanted or has committed a violent act or is serving time for a violent act, ICE is going to say yes. And then they don't have to go into grocery stores. They don't have to go other places that they learn that migrants, illegal migrants with violence in their past are hiding. Now, when they do go after people in public spaces, not in jails, they will encounter other illegal immigrants who would otherwise be fine. No one would ever bother them if they're not next to someone for whom a detainer has been issued or a summons has been issued. And Jacob Fry is making it worse. I did not make up the line, but I want to steal the line. ICE did not bring chaos to Minneapolis. Chaos brought ICE to Minneapolis. To steal it again, ICE did not bring chaos to Minneapolis. Chaos brought ICE to Minneapolis. And by chaos, that includes fraud committed by migrant communities, legal and illegal, on a scale that defies comprehension. I truly am astonished that Jacob Fry and Tim Walz and others are adopting secessionist rhetoric from the 1830s, 40s, 50s, and the beginning of the Civil War. The nullification theory has been repudiated since the end of the Civil War. With the adoption of the 14th Amendment, certainly, but Abraham Lincoln, I think, argued persuasively in his Cooper's Union speech that no one ever believed in nullification theory at the time of the Revolution. Now, they weren't the first ones. New England states for a while thought they might go their separate way, but they never got close. Shots were fired at Fort Sumter. Remember that? So Jacob Fry is on the Fort Sumter side of the line yet, but if he tells any of his officers to interfere with any federal agent, he's crossed it over. That's rebellion. And I know, I have seen the reports that serious people are considering prosecuting Tim Walz and Mayor Fry for obstructing federal law enforcement. They haven't laid their hands on them. If you lay your hands on an officer, you threaten an officer, you're going to jail. And you cannot do that. And ICE has got enough problems. They had an ambush attack that ended up killing 2 Texas law enforcement people. I think it was 2, but no ICE agents. But it was an organized long gun attack in Texas. Other violence against ICE agents happening everywhere. Stop it, Jacob Fry, Tim Walz, and other blue state Democrats. You know, or maybe you're too dumb to know, I'm telling you, nullification is not your right. There is a supremacy clause, and when and if you control the Congress, you can repeal the authorization statutes for ICE. You can defund ICE, and a couple of your left-wing lunatics want to defund ICE, but until then, you can't. And Jacob Fry, keep making a fool out of yourself. Someone's going to eventually ask you, because you went to Villanova Law School, and they're a pretty good law school, what about the supremacy clause, Mayor Fry? What about that? And at that point, some journalist will do their job, who knows a little bit about the law. Not a lot. Just, wait a minute, I thought the necessary and proper clause gave the federal government the right to do whatever is necessary and proper to enforce the immigration power, which is explicitly given to them in Article 1, and Congress did pass the statute under which ICE is operating. And you know that the supremacy clause is in there as well. So what exactly are you saying? Are you a John Calhounist? Did you revert to John Calhoun? Been dead since 1850, and not since the end of the Civil War has anyone taken this point of view other than Tim Walz and Jacob Fry, because it's so stupid you don't want to actually mouth it. It is a federal holiday, and markets are closed, and apparently the Senate is too, because Senator Tom Cotton is usually here, but he's not today. So I bet you that the Cottons are off on a frolic and adventure on a national holiday. It is Martin Luther King Day. I brought that up in hour number 1, and lots of American businesses work on Martin Luther King Day because they give the day after Thanksgiving off to people, and we're one of them. But we do honor the great Dr. Martin Luther King, and we'll catch up with Senator Cotton when we can. I want to go back to Scott Bessent on Meet the Press yesterday. He had 2 comments about Greenland. I'm going to play them again. Cut number 7.
President Trump strongly believes that we cannot outsource our security because, Kristen, let me tell you what will happen, and it might not be next year, might not be in 5 years, but down the road, this fight for the Arctic is real. We would keep our NATO our NATO guarantees, and if there were an attack on Greenland from Russia, from some other area, we would get dragged in. So better now, peace through strength, make it part of the United States, and there will not be a conflict because the United States right now, we are the hottest country in the world. We are the strongest country in the world. The Europeans project weakness. The U.S. projects strength.
And then Secretary Bessent added cut number 8.
If we look for years, for over a century, American presidents have wanted to acquire Greenland, and what we can see is that Greenland is the essential to the U.S. national security. We're building the Golden Dome, the missile system, and look, President Trump is being strategic. He's looking beyond this year. He's looking beyond next year to what could happen for a battle in the Arctic. We are not going to outsource our national security. We are not going to outsource our hemispheric security to other countries. In Trump 1.0, President Trump told the Europeans, do not build Nord Stream 2. Do not rely on Russian oil. And guess what, Kristen? Guess what is funding Russia's efforts against Ukraine? European purchases of Russian oil. So America has to be in control here.
Now, I am trying to explain this to a number of people who object. Friends of mine, family of mine, they object to Greenland. And I explained to them, Greenland has been on the table since 2017. Donald Trump arrived, as did many other presidents in office, wanting Greenland. And people originally laughed. Then you explain, Greenland is 3 times the size of Texas. It is the biggest island, not a continent, it's an island. And it has 27,000 miles of shoreline. And that's a lot of shoreline, 27,000 miles. Extending out from every yard of those 27,000 miles is a 230-mile invisible line. And when you connect up all those dots, around 230 miles out around the coastline of Greenland. That is their exclusive economic zone. They can exclude from the exclusive economic zone fishing fleets like the predatory massive Chinese fishing fleet, which routinely attempts to enter into other countries' exclusive economic zone and take all the fish. That's one thing we want to, and by the way, Denmark has 20 ships. They can't possibly do this. They're not even expeditionary ships. They cannot possibly protect the exclusive economic zone. They would have to ask us to do it, like NATO has asked us to do everything since World War II. They're beginning to figure out they'd better pick it up, and Donald Trump got them on the plan to get to 2%, now to get to 5%. And a lot of people in NATO are upset because Donald Trump is not discreet. He is not subtle. Donald Trump is a hammer on the wall. We need to have Greenland. By have, it can be a territory like Puerto Rico, like Guam, or it can be a protectorate like the Marshall Islands, like many others. Or we can have a 400-year lease. The deal is, though, China will act in a predatory fashion like they do everywhere else. So will Russia. They don't have a fishing fleet in Russia. And not only do we need to exclude hostile powers from the alliance of tyrants, we also need to forward deploy the Golden Dome because of the advent of hypersonic missiles. And I've talked to many people on this program about hypersonic missiles. They're nasty. They're nasty because ICBMs, the old intercontinental ballistic missiles, they used to have to go up on launch, and then they would go through an arc, and the arc would be predictable, and you could see where they were, and you'd have 15 to 30 minutes to shoot down an ICBM if you have any capability of doing it with a THAAD interceptor, or in the case of Israel, an Arrow. There are other different ways of that is not the case with hypersonics, which don't go in the big arc, don't leave space and come back into Earth orbit. Hypersonics can launch from airplanes, they can launch from trucks, they can launch from anywhere. Now, Golden Dome and Golden Beam, like Iron Beam, which the Israelis are now deploying, will be able to take care of them if they're forward deployed. But you're going to need more response time. And that's what Greenland is going to become, a forward operating base for Golden Dome. And so it's not a joke. If you make it a joke, you're revealing yourself as unserious. Remember Jonathan Swift, better remain silent and be thought a fool than open your mouth and remove all doubt. Don't try and argue Greenland isn't necessary to the national security of the United States, because it is. Don't try and argue that China isn't a threat. It is. China is engaged in the gray zone already. From somewhere between 0 and 1 on the conflict scale, they're between 0 and 1. They're not at 1 yet. Not open kinetic conflict. That's 1. But it might be that might be coming tomorrow. We don't know. But they are a predatory power. Mark Carney going over there from Canada and saying we have an alliance with China is astounding. They're a genocidal, Marxist, totalitarian prison camp with Jimmy Lai in jail. And they will eventually come, like they did. They almost fished out the Galapagos, one of the most pristine and protected environments in the world. Chinese went there and fished because they don't care. They're a predatory country with global ambitions to be the only superpower. And that's not going to happen. But we need to be very realistic about what our grandchildren will need, maybe even our children will need, which is a national security policy based on realism. Donald Trump is the punisher. We don't want to punish Denmark. We don't want to punish NATO. We want them to join us in the realism club. This is the way the world works. China is a predator. It didn't work out. Bill Clinton let it into the WTO. It did not work out. We thought Deng Xiaoping and the 2 presidents that followed him, the 2 general secretaries that followed him, was going to integrate China, and didn't work out. They turned out to be stealing everything that isn't nailed down, to build the largest navy in the world, to expand their nuclear weapon arsenal, and to unleash a variety of Coast Guard ships that are really Navy ships, to correct and build giant roll-on, roll-offs, and to do their predatory fishing fleet. And we cannot let that get close to the United States or the Arctic. China's declared itself a near-Arctic power. There is no such thing. That's just giving them the excuse to go where they want to go to get the fish that they want, regardless of the exclusive economic zone. I want to be very careful in this segment. Dick Mattis is coming up next segment. I'm going to talk to him about the anti-Semitism. I may play you that clip again with Jillian Turner this morning. But first, I do want to extend my heartfelt condolences to Bears fans everywhere. Bears fans everywhere. It's not easy to lose a game like that. Browns fans have a lot of experience losing games like that. It's like Red Right, 88. It's like the drive. Most like the fumble, actually. You know, and it was the same team, Broncos. And was it Broncos? Who did the Bears beat? Who did the Bears lose to? It wasn't the Broncos. I'm wrong. It was Rams. They have horns. Broncos have, well, they don't have horns. They have hoofs. So that's how come I got it mixed up. Hoofs on both Broncos and Rams. So the Rams go up to Chicago, and they're supposed to lose to the Bears. It's snowing. It's cold. They're from Los Angeles. They're supposed to lose. And turns out the Bears drive down with almost no time remaining. And maybe the most unbelievable play I've ever seen. But I've seen the immaculate reception. I've seen the Vikings beat the Browns with a memorable catch. I've seen a lot of astonishing things. I've never seen a throw like Caleb Williams threw. And I actually had that proven up for me by reading the post-game notes. The NFL has statistics of longest pass thrown from the red zone. Red zone starts at the 20. So you would think the ordinary red zone pass is between 25 and 32 yards. Could be shorter. I mean, you can scramble. You can't throw a forward pass past the line of gain, the line of scrimmage. So take the snap, drop back 7 steps, find someone in the end zone. Maybe you scramble a bit. Maybe you're Fran Tarkenton. But look at this. He's like sprinting backwards. Where is he? He's so far back. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, we're going to play that again, Harley, if you can, because we're going to try and figure out he's at the 40. Yeah, he's past the 30. He's at the 40. And he throws this ball 3 yards deep in the end zone. So he threw a 43-yard touchdown pass from the 20, and he tied the game. Didn't tie the game. They needed the point after touchdown. They got it. So 17-17, they go to overtime, and they lose. Now, I tell you, that hurts. And to my friends on WIND AM 560, The Answer in Chicago, I am sorry. I am. I just want to be realistic with you. This is some tough love. You'll never forget losing that game. Ever. You might be 6. You might forget everything else about your childhood. You remember that. All right, you're definitely going to remember that if you're 12. And if you're like anything over 18, you might as well just put it on permanent replay. Moreover, I can tell you this because I've lived it. Every time the Bears play in Los Angeles, if you're a Bears fan that goes to get to the game, they're going to roll that tape. Because I've been to Broncos Mile High Stadium a few times since the drive and the fumble. The shot is not involved in it. Red Right, 88 isn't involved in it. But the Broncos were the drive, Elway, and the fumble, Ernest Biner. And every time, you can bank on it, every time the Browns play at Mile High Stadium, they have on an endless loop the drive and the fumble. So you haven't seen that very terrible, horrible end of the game yet. You're going to see that play forever. And then you're going to see the field goal kick by the Rams that came after it. And you're going to remember how awful last night felt. And I have sympathy for non-football appreciating spouses. It is the case in my home that the fetching Mrs. Hewitt wouldn't care if the Browns got lost on the Edmund Fitzgerald and went to the bottom of Lake Superior. She would not care. She would actually kind of be happy because the tickets cost money. And so she wouldn't mind if the Browns went away. So there are probably some grieving Bears fans who don't have emotional support in their home. You want to be on the lookout for them in the Windy City. They may have been late today. In fact, I'm sure they were late today. They're going to call in tomorrow, and they're still going to be hungover. And the reason is losing a game like that after you come back with a play like that, that's not fair. That's not fair. Getting stopped is okay. I mean, that would have hurt. But to score that way, it's just remarkable. Caleb Williams magic. I think Shedeur Sanders is going to do that next year for the Browns if they get a head coach. By the way, Kevin Stefanski picked up by the Atlanta Falcons in like 5 seconds because he's a great coach. The problem was not the coach in Cleveland. The problem is we don't have an offensive line and we don't have any wide receivers not named Fannin. We're laughing here because Vic Mattis joins us, co-host of the Getting Hammered podcast, weekend editor at the Free Beacon, arts and culture editor at the Free Beacon. I want you to put on not your Getting Hammered hat, Vic, not your weekend editor hat. I want you to put on your arts and culture hat. The Las Vegas Sphere is going to get a twin across the river from Old Town Alexandria next to the MGM Casino. What do you think of that, arts and culture editor?
You know, I was in Vegas a few years ago, and it was just before the Sphere was built, Hugh, and I missed out on that. And they say it is an amazing concert experience, and the fact that it's this ginormous glowing orb that's on 24/7 nonstop, that really sums up. It best epitomizes what Las Vegas is all about. It doesn't quite sum up what Prince George's County is all about, which is where this is going to be built. I think it's a terrible idea. I mean, there's a place for everything, right? And the Sphere is perfect in Las Vegas. Prince George's County, where MGM Grand is, the casino is there, is not quite there. I enjoy gambling. Do not get me wrong, and I try to be responsible, but you know, there's sort of a time and a place. And when you go to MGM here in Maryland, they have very expensive tables, like table minimums, you know, $50, $100 tables. Okay, I can see that in Vegas, but again, not in Prince George's County. So I find it maddening. They're trying to make this thing happen. It's going to be quite an experience for everybody across the river, though, in Old Town, I guess.
It's going to be an everyday 24/7, 365 experience. And Old Town has lots of houses that border on the look across the river at the MGM Grand. They already see the Ferris wheel. I just think it's going to be hilarious when the Alexandria City Council realizes that there is they can't do anything about it because it's a Maryland land use decision. Nothing. If it's been approved by Maryland and by the local authority, there's nothing you can do about it, which may bring back property rights. Let me now turn, though, Vic, to the second most shocking local story, which is that the vetting team for Kamala Harris asked Josh Shapiro, did you work for Mossad? And when he was shocked and outraged, the former White House counsel said, well, we got to ask, have you been in contact with Israeli intelligence? What do you make of that? I already exploded my answer on CNN today, on Fox News today.
Well, it totally sort of reveals the thinking behind the Kamala Harris campaign team and how they feel about Israel, how they feel about what was happening in Gaza. We knew that because Kamala Harris obviously spoke out and wanted to call for an end to the quote-unquote violence there. I don't think she quite said the word genocide, but we know how her team obviously feels about this. And they must have been very uncomfortable with the fact that Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania was a contender to be one of her running mates. And so they ask very tough questions because that's how they think of these things, that there could be a spy, somebody that's working with the Israeli government, as if it was, who was the fellow from the 1980s spy, Jonathan Pollard or something like that. You know, I mean, this is, so it's absurd. And then they asked him, you know, they asked Josh Shapiro, did he work with anybody who was undercover? And of course, to his credit, Shapiro said, how the heck am I supposed to know that if they're undercover? Then I wouldn't know if they were a spy. What they want to know is, what is the extent of your connections to them, especially as, meaning the Israelis, especially as they're trying to figure out how do we win Michigan? And obviously, they went with Tim Walz. They thought that was safer because they were, focused on the blue wall. And of course, it didn't make a lick of a difference. They lost Michigan anyway. And it's but good for Josh Shapiro that he avoided that train wreck. And he's probably now obviously very focused on 2028.
So I have a theory, Vic. I'm going to test it out on you. I think they wanted him to withdraw, that they wanted to offend him. I think the next question is, which part of the protocols of the elders of Zion do you believe the most? Yeah, it's like they wanted to drive him off the ticket, and he didn't. And then they smeared him by saying he had demands that were inappropriate because they knew he was the best selection, but they weren't going to pick a Jew because they have this crazy wing of their party. Do you think I have the best explanation?
Yeah, you do. I mean, there was no way he would have gotten through that primary, I think, as the first Jewish vice presidential running mate. It would have been unbearable.
He went for Joe Lieberman.
It would have been. That's
Joe
right.
Lieberman.
Thank you for reminding me about Joe Lieberman. Of course, that is a different Democratic Party, Hugh.
You're not
seeing it now.
That's the takeaway. Do you think anybody asked Joe Lieberman, anybody in the Al Gore wing of the party, anybody asked him if he was a Mossad agent?
Yeah, no. But again, you're talking about a party that was, fairly still connected to the Clinton years where Clinton talked about, abortion being safe and rare, legal, safe and rare. That is a different world. There's no way any of these people on the Democratic side would survive today, and certainly not Joe Lieberman, whether it be his foreign policy or questions about his allegiances, absurd things like that. And the same thing with Josh Shapiro. And then in the 107 Days book that Kamala Harris had, supposedly she claims that Shapiro asked questions about how many rooms do they have in the vice president's mansions and silly questions, which, to, again, Shapiro's credit, on an interview he called out as BS. So,
by the way, Bethany Mandel relays to me that they also asked him questions about how cheap he was. Again, another anti-Semitic trope. I want to close by asking you, Vic, what do you think President Trump is going to do vis-a-vis Iran? What do you want him to do?
Well, we really thought, at least some of my sources thought, that it was going to happen. An attack, an airstrike of some nature was going to happen last week. It did not. They were still waiting for the Abraham Lincoln and possibly the George Bush aircraft carriers to come into the region. And that is happening. I believe one or both are on their way already. I think there is going to be, to a certain extent, an airstrike that will target the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. I think there's going to be a substantial cyber attack that will disable the Iranian regime from coordinating and hopefully give a chance for these protesters to topple that regime and to find an alternative and something better than they've had for the last 47 years. I don't think it is an all Trump's plan to, create
let it slide.
The next regime.
I don't believe that.
He's not. No, I don't believe that either. But he is going to help them.
Exit question: on a scale that ranks proportionality by population, Tiananmen Square, 9/11, 10/7, and the Iran massacre, which is the most proportionate terrible killing? I think it's Iran.
Yeah, if those numbers turn out to be true, if it's closer to 20,000, then indeed it's going to be the worst thing ever. And there's silence across the nation's campuses about this.
It is, and that's why I hope the president does do everything you said and more. Blow up Carg Island is top of my list. Thank you, Vic Mattis. Follow him on X at Victorino Mattis. Hear him on the Getting Hammered podcast. Coming up next hour, Mike Duran, senior fellow at the Hudson Institute and one of the handful of experts on Iran who actually are credentialed, like Karim Sajopour, Mark Dubovitz. There are a few old hands who've been following the Islamic Republic of Iran for a long time. Coming up, Mike Duran. We'll talk about what the president should do and what he can do. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I remind you about that every hour. And I take Relief Factor every day, and I did in the first hour. And I remind you that I do so to avoid the minor aches and pains that come with exercise and aging. And I actually got to 11.5. 8 days ago, I did 10. Yes, on Saturday, I did 11.5. And I'm hoping on Friday or Sunday to get to 13, half marathon place. And I don't know that I'm going to enter a half marathon. There's a good one in Surf City down in Huntington Beach. But I'm so slow that they might have packed up everything by the time I finish. Nevertheless, I do get my miles in. And that's because of Relief Factor. So I want to encourage any of you who've got minor aches and pains that you normally treat with Aleve or aspirin or ibuprofen or Tylenol, go to relieffactor.com, or better, call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. Ask for the starter pack, $19.95. It's less than $1 a day for 3 weeks. And you can order it as well at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. I want to close by playing you Don Lemon at City's Church in St. Paul yesterday, where he knowingly went into a private space to disrupt its worship services, which is a felony. Cut number 3.
Into Minneapolis a little bit ago and did some reconnaissance on the ground, speaking to an organization there that's gearing up for resistance and protest. I've been pleasantly surprised to see the community coming together. Diverse community. If you see this, when we first pulled up, we're like, wait a minute, which operation are we at? And as it turns out, because we were like, well, this is kind of MAGA coded, right? Saw the American flag or whatever, but these are resistance protesters. They're planning an operation that we're going to follow them on. I can't tell you exactly what they're doing, but it's
MAGA coded. Let me explain. That just is an indicator of advanced TDS when you say something is MAGA coded. The penalty for violating the FACE Act include a $10,000 fine and jail time of not more than 1 year, or both for a first offense. A second offense, I don't think Don Lemon's been charged before, but you don't get to ride along as a journo and be treated any differently than the other people. But I want you to consider, in light of the number of school and church shootings that have happened in the United States in the last 10 years, what the people in that church thought was happening when they stormed in, and whether or not, if there was a parent there with small children and they were carrying concealed, which is legal in the Twin Cities, you can have a permit. If they had shot one of those people, would you be upset with the shooter or with the morons who violated federal law? I don't know, but I'm telling you, it's getting more and more dangerous in the Twin Cities. As promised, Mike Duran of the Hudson Institute, where he is, of course, one of the resident experts on the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I preface this by saying there are a handful of people who have been actually working on the Islamic Republic of Iran for more than a day or a couple of weeks or a news cycle or a few. And one of them is Michael Duran. Michael, welcome back. Good to see you. By way of beginning, can you tell people how long you've been focused on the Islamic Republic?
First of all, thank you for having me. Great to be here. I guess about 20 years. I worked in the White House for George W. Bush from 2005 to 7. I was in charge of the Middle East at the National Security Council, and I spent more time reading intelligence on Iran than anything else when I was there.
Okay, that's why I called you in. I want to find out, do you want, if President Trump calls you today and says, Mike, what do you want me to do about Iran? What does Mike Duran say?
What I think, I wasn't expecting that question. I was expecting you to ask me, what do I think Trump is going to do? And what I think he's going to do, I think, is also what I'd like to see him do. I think he should take out Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader. I think decapitation is the only way to move forward at this point. I think there's no possibility of negotiating with the regime as long as he's in place. There's no possibility of alleviating the suffering of the people on the ground as long as he's in place. And so moving him aside is moving him out of the picture is probably in everyone's interest.
Now, that is regime decapitation. It's what we did in Venezuela. Assume for the moment we can do that. What do you think would take his place?
Well, I think a leader from within the IRGC, an IRGC general would, Revolutionary Guard general would step up and take charge. Or it's also possible that his son or someone else would take the supreme leader's role. But I think that the office itself would be diminished by his departure.
Now, Mike Duran, I've got a target list. I don't know anything, right? I'm a civilian. All I know about Iran is what I've read about Iran and over the years and what you learned on the domestic side over at DOJ when I was in the AG's office doing FISA warrants. So I don't know a lot about how it operates other than what Ostavar or you or Kareem Sadjoupur or others write about it. Why have we not blown up Karg Island, and they have two other oil terminals that fill up tankers that provide them hard currency for the regime. Otherwise, there's just no way for them to get any money if we blow up their terminals. Why haven't we done that?
We haven't done that, and that's actually the logical next question in response to what I said, because there are real inherent dangers in what I said about decapitation. And we haven't done it because we're afraid of the counterattack from the Iranians. There was back in June when the Israelis and the Iranians were fighting. The Israelis didn't hit any of the oil facilities of the Iranians because they were afraid that Iran would respond by hitting Saudi and Emirati oil facilities, or by hitting certain facilities in Israel that they, as well, oil facilities in Israel. So there was a kind of mutual restraint in that war. It wasn't quite all-out war between Israel and Iran. And that's something I think that we fear as well. The Iranians still have an incredibly potent missile arsenal that they can use to strike our positions and to strike the Israelis and others. I think the president, one of the reasons why I think he's going to go for why he will think seriously about a decapitation strategy is that he'll get signals from within the Iranian system that there are people at the top levels of the regime who would like to see that happen too. I'm sure there's a lot of frustration with the situation right now. They don't have water in Tehran. They have water shortages. They have electricity shortages. They have a currency that is completely worthless now. If you're a businessman, you can't take a loan. If you're a worker, you can't have a working wage because the economy is completely collapsed. And all of that goes back to the American sanctions. So until you get a negotiation with the Americans, you can't begin to work on any of the practical problems that they have day to day. And you can't get a negotiation with the Americans because the supreme leader won't allow it.
All right, so Mike Duran, I'm back to the what ifs. I thought in June that their ICBM attack hit at least one utility that was of interest, and that they tried to hit Dimona, which people in Israel who don't have clearances and people outside of Israel who don't have clearances believe to be where their nuclear weapons program is located in Israel at the Dimona facility. Assume for a moment that Israel has all the defenses that they had and that the Lincoln will provide more and that we've moved additional batteries of THAAD missiles and other things that we have, that they're as well defended as they can be. Why would taking out Khamenei but not taking out the oil not trigger a ICBM attack of the sort you're worried about?
Well, it will. It will, and one should be worried about it. But one would hope that there would be then a de-escalation process after Khamenei was taken out. That just like there was the last time around. The Israelis have an escalatory ladder that they did not go up in June. They were restrained by President Trump. I think the president expected that because he restrained the Israelis, that there would be a kind of I don't want to use the word gratitude, but at least an awareness on the side of the regime that they were spared thanks to America restraining Israel, and that they would be then more inclined to negotiate with them. But they've stiff-armed him since then. So I think he's going to conclude that they need another lesson. There is another thing they could do, though, Hugh, which they haven't done. They meaning the Trump administration. I've got an article coming out in the Wall Street Journal tomorrow morning saying that we can seize the money of the Iranians relatively easily. We know where it is, and so we don't even have to carry out a kinetic attack against their oil facilities. We can shut down their oil sales by destroying their shadow banking system. And we haven't wanted to do that until now because it is being run through one of our close allies. And I think that we've been a little bit too delicate with that ally.
Mike Duran, years ago when you were working for W, W invited Bill Bennett, Mark Levin, and me and three other talkers into the Oval to have a conversation about the war in Iraq. And either Bill or I or someone asked him, why aren't we going hard against Iran? And he said, lots of things we can do. We can disintermediate the money. Pretty big word, isn't it? Disintermediate for me. And it was funny, but I assume that's what you're talking about. We can take the money. We know where it is.
Yeah, yeah, and well, we can shut down the shadow banking system that they use to sell their oil to China, because the economic lung of Iran is actually in Dubai. The Dubai banks are where most of Iranian transactions are being processed. Last Thursday, the Treasury put out some new sanctions, and they hit shell companies that the Iranians use to move this money through the Dubai banking system, but we don't actually touch the banks. And I think and that's what my article tomorrow argues. We need to actually begin fining and even sanctioning these banks, because we know what they're doing. They pretend to not know that this is Iranian money, but it is, and they know it.
Now, Mike Durant, when we come back after the break, I want to explore further with you why you think he will act, when he's going to act, and whether or not there's enough strategic defense that has flowed into the country before then. But a quick exit question: can we do all three? Can we take a shot at Khamenei, who I assume is in a hardened location? Can we blow up Karg Island and the other two terminals? And can we disintermediate their money via the shutdown of the accounts? Can we do all three things?
We could do all three things at once, but if we go after the oil facilities, I think that they will hit the oil facilities of the UAE and Saudi Arabia, and that'll be quite messy.
Is that why Saudi Arabia? I don't think the UAE has MBZ has not called the president, to my knowledge, to urge restraint, but I understand both Israel and Saudi Arabia did last week. I thought that was more in line with getting ducks in a row. Is that what you thought?
No, I think the Saudis and the Turks, who are converging in their view of the region, want stability. They fear all of the instability that will come from conflict.
I'm going to come right back with Mike Durant. Follow him on X at Duranimator, and go to the Hudson Institute. He is one of the half dozen people actually knows what they're talking about when it comes to the mullah. Mike, why do you think the president didn't act last week before the protesters were killed? Although they did not protest because of his assurances of help, because they were blacked out. They can't rely on that. I mean, they weren't listening to my radio show 10 days ago when the president said, we'll hit them harder than they'll ever been hit before. And then he said it to Sean Hannity, he said it to Tony DeCouple. I don't think they were in the streets to be mowed down by the Iranians because of Donald Trump. So why do you think he didn't act last week?
Well, there's what we know, and you and I were talking about. A lot of the major countries in the region ask him not to, ask him to hold off. I suppose that also because we don't have enough forces in the region to handle the counterattack. Last June, we ran through 25% of our global THAAD missile arsenal or interceptor arsenal. And at current rates of production, it would take 5 years to replace the 25% that we went through. The Iranians, Russians, and Chinese, and the North Koreans, they have discovered a chink in our armor, and that is the question of these interceptors. They can shoot a lot of relatively cheap missiles, drones, and ballistic missiles at us and our allies, and taking them down is very expensive. And so I would expect that our military said to President Trump that they didn't have the forces in place to handle the counterattack. Their neighbors were uncomfortable. And then there's what we don't know, Hugh, and that's what have the Iranians been saying, meaning the regime, to Trump. I wonder if there isn't some kind of a negotiation going on there. There seems to be from some of the comments that the president has made, but I don't have any information about it.
Mike, on Friday during the big prayers, there's always a major prayer deal in Tehran on Friday. It wasn't Khamenei, it was Hatami, who's another hardliner. And he said, we are going to hang people, and Donald Trump is awful, and he said bad things about the president. Khamenei over the weekend insulted the president again. This is not the behavior of a regime that is afraid of us, is it?
No, it's not the behavior, and it's also though very important for them to look tough before their own public with respect to the United States. I mean, the message isn't just to Donald Trump; it's to all the protesters. Don't think that we are cowed by America. Don't think that they can do anything to protect you. So it's really that's the heart of the message is really to their own protesters. But they're very adept at talking one way in public and sending a completely different message in private. You'll remember that Trump told the story about when they hit Al Assad Air Base after we killed Soleimani. They called him and said, "Listen, we're going to keep it limited. Let's please have a climb down after this." And so that's typical about the way the Iranians work. Very tough in public, and sending more conciliatory messages in private.
In June, Mike, I think the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies put out a target list, and there was in Iran, and there were 25 different things, including oil facilities, IRGC headquarters. They can't put where the supreme leader is because he's going to pull a Dick Cheney and go to an undisclosed location, or like W went to an undisclosed location. Do you think we even have the ability to decapitate the regime? I would imagine they're on high alert, a lot higher than Nicolas Maduro was.
Yeah, I can't know that, but I'm guessing that the Israelis probably know where he is. I mean, they have shown to have such penetration of the regime. It would really surprise me if they didn't know that, and if the Israelis know it, then we know it. But it's possible. It's possible that we don't.
You know, I've been reading this book, King of Kings, about the Shah, and it was a bestseller last year, and about what the Shah did and didn't do, and the Iranian army didn't hang with him, and he was incapable of the kind of violence we saw last week. I want to get your assessment of this. When we account for population size, 3,000 Americans dead on 9/11, country of 300 million. Country of 10 million Israelis, they lose 1,200 dead in a day. And Tiananmen Square, we don't know how many people the Chinese killed in 1989. I think proportionally, the massacre of last week is far worse than any of those three events. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, I do, and we don't know the final numbers, but I mean it's clearly in the many thousands. I don't know how many. We won't know for some time. But you know, there's not going to be anyone in Iran who doesn't have a family member who's been affected.
Okay, so that brings me to this. I don't think we can bring about regime change. Matt Continenti talked about regime coercion. I talk about regime evolution in Venezuela. We're hoping that they move, like Jeane Kirkpatrick said, from dictatorships to democracy. But I don't think we can change anything because it's such a malignancy inside the state within the state is such a malign and everywhere present thing. What is the best way of killing? I thought killing off the oil was the best way to kill off the metastatic IRGC. What do you think is?
I think it's what I'm arguing in the Wall Street Journal. I think the cleanest, the easiest move that'll give you the most effect with the least disruption is to shut down their banking system, and we can do that. In one fell swoop, we can do it. They will work to try to reconstitute, but we can definitely do that. That I think is the smartest first step. Because this is also the system that is allowing the elite in Iran to live. You know, there are these two economies. There's the elite economy and the economy of everybody else. And the elite is able to live this luxurious lifestyle while immiserating everyone else thanks to this banking system. So you'll hit the elite hard, and that would position the Americans, I think, in a much better negotiating position, regardless of what they choose to do. If Donald Trump chooses to negotiate, if he chooses to strike, whatever he wants to do, he'll have more leverage if he shuts down their banking system.
Now, do you argue tomorrow and generally that going after Khamenei is the first step, or is it a coordinated step along with shutting down the shadow banking, or is there a ladder of escalation in Michael Doran's mind?
No, I only argued about I only argued about the banking because nobody was talking about this, and they're talking about a lot of other things like seizing tankers and you for example attacking the oil, which could have all kinds of secondary effects that we might not want to contemplate. And I was actually surprised at myself when I said take out Khamenei. I really think that that's probably where Trump is thinking because of the success of the Maduro operation and so forth. If I were actually in Donald Trump's shoes, the thing I think I would first do is go for the money. I would want to have a lot of information that I personally right now don't have before I would order a major military operation.
All right, so I'm going to come back with Michael Duran. Don't go anywhere, America, except over to my YouTube channel. You will see this video there before the end of the day. You'll also see the transcript over at hughhewitt.com. Michael Duran can be followed at Duranimator. I'll ask him that on the other side. I think it's that. I've got it linked. I've got it. I watch it every day, so I know where Mike is putting stuff up, but I think it's Duranimator. Michael, what is your X account? I left last segment without making sure I got it right. What is it?
Oh, it's Duranimated.
Duranimated. Okay, so that people will find it if they get close enough. Duranimated. Okay, Mike, back to the IRGC. I've heard so many different views of how many people have guns within the crazy militia. They're sort of parallel military. It's not the Iranian military.
The Basij.
The IRGC. So how many in the IRGC and how many in the Basij?
Oh, I don't have the numbers at my fingertips. I think the Basij is about 6,000 armed men. But I don't have those loaded up in my head right now. And the IRGC is a relatively lean force. They don't have the IRGC is there to protect the regime, so it controls the missiles, it controls the proxy network abroad. The Artesh, which is the regular military, is been historically neglected by the regime because it was associated with the Shah and with the Americans.
So neglected that during the 12-day war, none of their MiGs from the old days even flew because they would have gotten shot down by the IDF. Now, I also remember from the June 12-day war, a lot of their missile launchers were destroyed by the Israeli defense forces. Do they have enough to mount an attack on the oil facilities of UAE, of Bahrain, of the Saudi Arabia, or Kuwait? Because I still think unless you cut the oil off, you really are not going to, no one's going to notice bank account seizures, right? If we're trying to deter bad people around the world, no one's going to notice that.
They certainly do. They've put a lot of effort into building more since then. The Israelis did not get all of them. They made a point of showing, remember at the end of the war, that they could still get them off. They had also many in the far east of the country, which they had been not entirely beyond the Israeli purview, but outside of where the Israelis were focusing. And they could use those to hit their neighbors. They could bring them westward to shoot the Israelis at the Israelis. There's no doubt that they still have a potent arsenal and the ability to deliver it.
So, Mike, is there really any solution here? I don't think we're going to go in a ground war for another decade or two until the Iraq effect is over and the Afghanistan effect is over, like the Vietnam syndrome. But is there any way to actually dislodge the regime? I don't think there is, but tell me if I'm wrong.
No, I don't think this is an easy process. I think we are going to be managing a very, very volatile and messy Iran for years. It's gonna morph into different forms. Once the supreme leader is out of the picture, we can begin negotiations with the regime. But the IRGC runs the economy of Iran. Some very large percentage, maybe 80% of the economy. I'm making that number up, but it's something like that magnitude is in the hands of the IRGC. So regime change would really mean getting the IRGC out of the economy, and that's going to take a very, very long time.
Well, that's like debathification. And of course, everyone remembers what happened in Iraq after we debathified and disbanded the army. Doesn't want that. In fact, Donald Trump brought it up. Why didn't you take out all the other people not named Maduro? And he said, you remember Iraq after Paul Bremer got there? And is that a well-taken lesson? Is that something we should internalize?
I do think it's important. I think it's important to be prudent about this whole situation. I'm not saying that we should be looking for an IRGC, a kinder, gentler IRGC to cut a deal with, but we should be careful about big, grand projects of remaking the Middle East. One of the most important issues that isn't talked about in the Iran context is the ethnic question in Iran. Persians only make up about 47% of the population of Iran, and we have these concentrated ethnic enclaves all around. The Persians are in the middle of the country. It's kind of like a sunflower. They're the disc in the middle of the flower, and the petals are all the minorities around the borders. And the minorities are on both sides of the borders. So you have Azerbaijanis in the northwest of the country, right next to the country of Azerbaijan. So they have strong bonds of affinity with people across the border. The Kurds in Iran are right across the border from Kurds in Iraq and Kurds in Turkey and so forth. So the ethnic composition of Iran is of great concern to Iran's neighbors, and this is changing significantly while we speak.
I have one more segment with Mike Duran. Don't go anywhere except Duranimated. I got it right on X. Duranimated, and follow him there. Michael, what are the consequences if President Trump hasn't done anything to punish Iran for the massacre of at least 15,000 people and the imprisonment of tens of thousands more? If he does nothing in a period of time, let's say 2 months, because sometimes it takes 2 months to get ready for something, what will be the consequences for Donald Trump and for the American deterrence that he has rebuilt, actually, in the first year of his second term?
Well, that's you put your finger, I think, on the key word there. You said the key word, which is deterrence. You remember, Donald Trump likes he likes to keep all options open, and he likes to put himself in the position of being the decider, and he likes to keep everybody guessing, including the people close to him who are around him. That isn't such a bad thing, but I think sometimes he gets the calibration wrong. In the last, in his first term, you remember that he contemplated striking Iran, and then he didn't. And then the Iranians came to the conclusion that he was a paper tiger, and they tried to Qasem Soleimani launched this whole campaign to throw us entirely out of Iraq. And that then led to Trump taking down Soleimani. So I think that was an awareness on his part that he had gotten the deterrence wrong. I think he's had enough experience with Iran that he won't make that mistake again. But one of the reasons why I'm saying that I think he's going to act is because he took such a strong position and they have flouted him so directly. And I think he's seen this movie before.
I also agree with that. But having been dared, having been taunted by the regime since he took the strong public position for 8 days, and they haven't turned their internet back on, I think just to disintermediate money is bad because no one can see it. It's worse to take a shot at Khamenei and miss, have him show up in a secret bomb. So the one thing we can do that I know we can hit IRGC headquarters. They're all over the country, and we can hit the oil terminals. So if the problem is our very closest allies next to Israel are the little Sparta, UAE, do you think they want us to get to a conclusion of this, or do they want? We haven't done anything to Iran. I mean, we literally have done nothing to them since Midnight Hammer. Do you think they want to leave the status quo with them reconstituting their missile program and nothing else?
No, but they don't. What they also don't want, what neighbors don't want, is a wounded animal. They have to live next to Iran always. So if the United States goes in and takes some action against IRGC bases, IRGC headquarters, and then leaves the regime in place, the regime can then might take out its anger on its neighbors. The other thing the neighbors don't want or worried about is tremendous disruption. The Turks especially are worried about this. The Turks look at our policies in Iraq, and they look at the Syrian civil war. They still have millions of Syrian refugees in Turkey. Created a lot of disruption on their borders. They all crave stability, and none of them, just like they go through the calculations like you just did with me, and they don't see a simple solution here. There's no simple set of actions that gets us to a perfectly stable Iran, and there's no set of really strong acts of retribution against the regime that don't create the possibility of tremendous disruption with lots of refugees, creation of new pockets for terrorists to work in, and so on. So nobody has the magic bullet here, the answer that gives us everything we want, and so they're all counseling caution.
So nobody has a magic bullet. Nobody can predict the future or what they will do. What do you think the Israelis would prefer President Trump do?
I think that the Israelis want the number one thing that they want is an end to the Iranian nuclear program. The other thing that they want is an end to the ballistic missile program. So if there's going to be a major attack on Iran, they would like to see, in addition to the stuff that you're talking about, like hitting IRGC headquarters, they would really like to see the ballistic missile program hit hard, very, very hard, and actually taking it offline. I don't know that we can promise them that, though.
Do you have faith that Iron Beam works, their new laser?
Oh, everything I've seen about it suggests that it works. It's not a total solution to the problem, but it's an incremental step forward.
Well, if that works, and we've got the link in there with the full complement of a strike group and all their defensive abilities, and we've flooded THAADs in there, what's the worst case scenario if Donald Trump does all of the above? IRGC, take a shot at Khomeini and other senior leadership, and take out the oil. What's the worst case?
Oh, the worst case is that they would. The worst case is that they would hit I think the oil fields in Saudi Arabia. The worst case is that one of their ballistic missiles would get through and create a mass casualty effect in Israel. We've also seen now, you've seen that Catherine Herridge report last week that the Iranians used a dirty bomb I should be a little bit more cautious in my language, may have used a dirty bomb against us, against al-Assad base in response to the Soleimani killing. They could put something nasty on the end of one of these warheads as well.
You know, I have seen that report. I've asked people who were at al-Assad before and after they evacuated, they went back. Were they worried about that? They're not. Don't you think we would have tested for that, Mike?
Well, what I'm hearing is that there's an abnormal number of incidents of thyroid cancer among the people who survived. All I can say is it looked to me like it was a serious report that
she's a good reporter.
Should be looked into. Yeah. So I can't speculate as to why. Look, it's possible that they weren't aware of it, and it's only becoming aware now. It's also possible that they were not fully certain about it, and they didn't want to say it because it would require retribution when the policy didn't call for that.
Well, Mike Durant, we will look for your piece in the Wall Street Journal tomorrow, everyone who's listening, and I hope you will come back. Exit question, 10 seconds. Do you think Donald Trump will do something, anything that we notice within this week?
No, I think it'll be a week after.
All right. Mike Durant, I love people with answers. Thank you so much. Good to talk to you again. Duranimated. Go follow him on X. Generalissimo is going to post the transcript of Michael Duran so that you can have at least a half-hour serious read about the options available to President Trump vis-a-vis the terrorists who are running the state of Iran. And they are terrorists. They're the leading sponsor of state terrorism in the world. And there are things available to the president this week that he didn't have last week or the week before him, and they'll be around for a couple of months or forever long as the Abraham Lincoln is on station off of Iran. We'll keep you posted on that, and of course, tomorrow I'll update you on it. Before I leave you, though, I do want to remind you of two things. First, Consumer Cellular is a great sponsor. That's because they are a wonderful wireless provider, and you don't have to trade service for savings. You can have both if you call 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454. Get your phone bill out before you call. Or you can go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. That's also a portal in. Just remember, whether you call or go online to check out their rates and their packages for cell phone service, make sure you have remember my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, because it will get you the second month for free. All right, you'll get your second month for free if you make the switch. It takes about 20 minutes to make a switch. And the reason you need to get your phone bill out before you call is you got to find out how much you're paying for data, right? All wireless plans are the same in quality. Basically, all the same. All you need to know, but they're very different when it comes to pricing. And if you grandfathered yourself into an unlimited data plan years ago, you're probably paying way too much. Certainly, almost certainly, if you're 50 years and older. If you're 50 years and older, you really got to call because they got a special deal for seniors. And they're not seniors, they're near seniors, 50 and older. And it will get you 2 lines of unlimited data for $60 a month. Hard to beat that anywhere that I've ever seen. So make the switch to Consumer Cellular. It takes about 20 minutes. You'll be talking to a real live person in the service department here in the United States after a one-button touch. So 1-800, the number 411-4454, 1-800-411-4454, or go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. And as I did in the first hour, I reminded you in the second hour, and I'll tell you in the third hour. Did 11 and a half miles on Saturday. Beautiful day down at the beach. Not even a little bit stiff at church on Saturday afternoon, Sunday morning. Not even because I've got my distance back up so I can add incrementally. I mentioned 11 and a half miles for relief factor because last week it was 10. You always try and add incrementally. You don't do crazy things. And then I went up the Implacable Hill today before the program. So you ought to try Relief Factor because it works for me. It will work for you. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. You get Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, and omega, the only supplement I've taken in more than 20 years. Been taking it for 13 years, and I encourage you to try the 3-week starter pack for $19.95, less than $1 a day. And you get it by calling 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. Or go to their website, relieffactor.com. Remember, most of today's interview, including that with Mike Duran, which I just finished, are at my YouTube channel, Hugh Hewitt and YouTube. Occasionally, Dwayne transcribes one, as he will Mike Duran today. And Senator Tom Cotton, others at my YouTube channel. Follow me on X at Hugh Hewitt. And the podcast, of course, Highly Concentrated Hugh. And don't forget Dwayne's World podcast as well.